AI, the biggest buzzword of our time, impacting everything from marketing to sales and really everything in between. But I have a question that I've been thinking about when it comes to artificial intelligence. Is anything artificial really that good for you? For example, we now know that artificial sweeteners, they're not that good for you. The same is true for artificial colors in food as well as artificial scents and fragrances. And as the old saying goes, there's nothing like the real thing, baby. So, what if we started looking at AI through a different lens? Not artificial intelligence, but authentic intelligence. What is it that your account holders are longing for? What is it that your employees, that your team members really want? Is it artificial intelligence or is authentic intelligence? Which one's going to create the greatest impact for your financial brand as we continue to move forward and make progress in the age of AI? Well, let's find out together on today's episode of the Banking on Digital Growth podcast.
You're listening to the Banking on Digital Growth podcast.
Welcome back to the Banking on Digital Growth podcast. I'm James Robert Lay, founder and CEO of the Digital Growth Institute, where we help financial brands uncover and eliminate their biggest customer journey blind spots so that they stop losing loans and deposits. Now, before we get into today's episode, I want to invite you to join me in the Digital Growth community. It's there you can unlock all 12 courses in our Digital Growth University, plus get access to mastermind roundtables that I facilitate so that you can expand your network while continuing to connect, continuing to learn together with other growth-minded financial brand marketing and sales leaders. Send me a text right now, 832-549-5792, to join the Digital Growth community. And as a listener of this podcast, I'll also help you benchmark your website so that you can see where your website's performance stacks up and compares to other financial brands. Now, joining me for today's conversation is Ethan Wall, president of the social media law firm. Welcome to the show, Ethan. It is so good to finally get to hang out with you today.
Thanks, James Robert. Great to be here.
You know, you and I, similar perspective, born in the same month, born in the same year. We're going to talk about perspective, particularly when it comes to financial brands, change, social media. And before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I always want to take a step back, start off with something good, something positive. What is that for you right now, personally, professionally? It's your pick to get started on a positive note.
Ooh, wow. Well, we talked right before the episode about kind of a state of change. And specifically with credit unions, community banks, everything is always changing, but really everything is changing in life. And that's really exciting and fun. I think that we kind of hold on to what we're comfortable with. And that's cool because of things that we like. But life is this great state of change. I live a nomadic lifestyle. You and I have seen changes over the years, having been kind of starting at the same starting line together in the same month. And I think one of the things that I'm really embracing right now and really happy with is completely accepting a life of a state of change and looking towards the future, whether it's in my law practice or with my life, with a state of curiosity of what does the universe have in store? What are the new changes that I don't expect? And what is the ride of life going to be like? So for me, that brings me a lot of joy.
So let's talk about that because it does bring you joy. Change, adaptability, it brings me joy. And some changes I've experienced over the years are harder than others. I'm actually going through my own, I would call it third business transformation right now, as an entrepreneur of 22 years. What allows you as an individual to continue to change, to continue to transform, to continue to adapt? Because is that innate? Is that a learned behavior? Because I think about a lot of those who are watching and listening to the podcast, they're like, oh, that's easy for them. What makes it easy for you, or is it?
It's not. And I think, look, if you're sitting down to watch this podcast and you're like, hey, we're going to talk about social media and digital marketing for banks. We'll get there, but we're going to go start primal. We're going to start deep. Change is hard. I think we all struggle to change. We have things in life that are comfortable. And when life is easy and we know exactly what we're doing each day and where to get our groceries and how we're moving through it, we're in a state of emotional regulation and things feel calm. But that's not how life works. And life throws us curveballs. And I think if we go back to the beginning of our time on this planet, um, we have to adapt to change in order to evolve. And I think you either evolve or you die, whether that's as an individual, whether that's as a business, whether that's as a company, a society, everything. The Roman Empire is no longer here because they didn't evolve. And the aspects of who I was as a person is no longer here because I've had to evolve. I've had to grow up in certain ways, or I've had to let things go, whether it's a aspect of a business or an aspect of myself. And that's the hardest part because I think we become comfortable and our identities are tied to ourselves. But I think if someone is out there thinking, wow, change is easy for them, it's not. I think change is hard. But I think to have the courage and to know that we want to evolve personally and professionally, we've got to face those difficult questions and go through those changes to become who we're ultimately meant to be.
You're right. We're going to get to the social media aspect. We're going to get to the digital aspect, but I want to start here because what I'm observing when it comes to institutions, credit unions, community banks is letting go. Um, even the perspective of social media, a lot of perspective is still being influenced from say 2014, and it's not. It's 10 years later, and you and I were talking about being born in 1981, both in the month of August. But it was that 1994 when the internet reached the mass consciousness of humanity that I feel like how old you were then is directly influencing your perspective of the world. And it's not a matter of right or wrong, but someone who was 30, even take us 42, 43 now in 1994, go 70 years after that to where they're at today, 60, 70 plus. And that perspective is different than what we had as 13-year-olds in 94 is different than someone who was say 3 or not even born in 94, because you take everything that has transpired from 94 to 2024 at a macro level and how that has impacted the way that people shop and buy just anything, but specifically financial services. You look at the competitive landscape, you look at the way that just people connect, communicate. It's not 1994. It's 2024 going into 2025. And now, as of November 30th, 2022, you integrate this whole thing with AI and Chat GPT reaching the mass consciousness of humanity. AI existed before, just like the internet existed before 94. But now it's like, okay, the game has changed. People awareness is changing. Chat GPT 0 to 100 million users in 2 months. The massive adoption. It's just like, as a financial brand leader, I've got a lot of empathy because that I don't like change. I want to protect what we've built. But and you, as an attorney, you think a lot about risk. When does the risk of doing nothing, of continuing with the status quo, start to outweigh the risk of change and transformation?
I would say the answer to that question is different for everybody because we all have different degrees of risk tolerance and how much risk we're willing to take in order to get the reward and what is an unacceptable degree of risk and what is something that I'm willing to say, I don't know how this is going to pan out, but I'm going to take a leap of faith anyway. And I think the analogy that you have to help tie perhaps the outside the box start of the conversation to the digital landscape for banks and credit unions now is when we have to face change, there's fear. I don't know what life is going to be like doing things differently because I haven't gone down that road before. And fear stops us in our tracks. And I think the same thing for credit union and banking, marketing executives or leadership is, hey, there's something new here that I don't know about, like AI, like having my employees actively participate in our social media conversations and communications, and doing online giveaways, hiring influencers. I, as a banking executive, kind of like a lawyer, I'm afraid of change because I don't know what this is going to look like. I don't know how the laws are going to apply. And I feel like there are risks there, and I'm scared of taking action. And so we stand on the precipice of change, and we watch other people take the leap. We watch other people change. And at some point, we've got to decide, am I going to stay the way that I am? And I'm going to bank on what has worked for me in the past, feels safe and comfortable, and I feel like I'm going to do it. Or am I going to let progress and technology and advancement pass me by and be the last one on shore while everybody is kind of taken off and you're waving out there? And that doesn't seem good either. So I don't know when you take the leap, but if you don't take the leap, you'll never experience growth because you're staying the same and you're not adapting and being open to change, and you're not willing to overcome the fear of the unknown by taking calculated risks and taking smart next steps in a way that accepts that there's always going to be some degree of risk in the unknown. But that's where growth, and that's where beauty, and that's where professional and personal evolution lies.
So let's talk about this change as it relates to social media, because as I mentioned before, if I go back and I think about the context of social media through the lens of financial services, it takes me back to maybe like 2009, 10. I was just starting to speak about it on the conference circuit back then, and it was new, and you know, there was this big buzz about it. And then I want to say it was around like the 2013, 2014. I was like, listen, I'm not going to talk about this anymore. This is kind of become the status quo. This is where we're going. Someone else can fill in my shoes, and I'm going to go solve and learn something else. Cause it's just, I'm very curious. And so then I'm going to go learn the next thing or solve the next problem. You brought up the idea of influencers engaging in the dialogue discussion at a social level. And in my opinion, it's just this is the next evolution of connectivity, of community, of the human experience. We have the physical experience in the real world. We also have the digital experience. And I think, it's all about balance, because as a digital anthropologist myself, like I have struggled with digital addiction. I have had to uninstall social media, email, and even an internet browser from my phone just for my own mental well-being. But at the same time, I'm all in when I'm all in too. So it's a mix. Where have you seen the biggest changes over the years through the lens of financial services when it comes to social media and the work that you're doing as an attorney?
I'd say the first big shift came in about 2013, 2014, because that is when the FFIEC, the Federal Financial Institution Examination Council, released its social media guidance memorandum. Maybe I'm off on the year by a couple of years, but whatever, man. I'm 43. I forget things. But like you, I was on the speaker circuit teaching about social media and the law and writing books. And I was a law professor at the time and kind of teaching it for social media for lawyers. And what was at the time CUNA, that's now gone through its own evolution, asked me to speak at their Marketing and Business Development Council in Las Vegas about what is the social media guidance memorandum. It was kind of like, at the time, credit unions, and I'm sure the same thing with community banks, is they saw social media and you don't know whether something is going to be around for a while or whether it's going to be a trend. Look at the last 3 years. I would probably throw four things out there in terms of like well, social media is older, but social media, NFTs, Bitcoin, AI. Which one of these things is going to be around forever and completely fundamentally change the game? And which one is kind of just going to pass?
Right.
And social media is here to stay in some form or another. NFTs came, the NFTs kind of went. They're still there, but I don't think that's as big of a discussion. Bitcoin's here, it's there. It's here, it's there. It's going to change the world completely. It kind of goes away and now it's kind of back. And so it's there, but I don't know if it's completely shifted the landscape in the way that social media has. And if I'm making a bet on AI, I kind of think AI is going to be something that's here to stay. And so I think there was a while where people said, is social media going to be the big wave that we need to ride for a long time because it's going to keep shifting and changing, or is it not? And so I think once the social media guidance memorandum came out and said, hey, credit unions, hey, banks, you can no longer be a flamingo,
right,
and stick your head in the sand. And you need to have policies, procedures, guidelines, and guidance because we will be regulating this now because this is going to be a big part. That I think was that was the first big shift for me when I went from being a speaker on the subject to actually guiding and representing credit unions and banks of saying, you got to get off the sidelines because other people are now in the game. How are we going to implement this as opposed to, are we going to get into the game? So I think that was the biggest first shift for me.
That's interesting. And I'm curious if that time at QNOut in Vegas, we were both there because I remember I did a general session and I was introducing a new methodology back at the time, story selling, which was a key part of my first book, Banking on Digital Growth. But it took from about that 2014 time period all the way to 2020 to go through a lot of different evolutions to then make it into a book. And then it became definitive, at least in our landscape and worldview. Hey guys, sorry to interrupt the conversation with Ethan, but I want to invite you to text me right now on my cell phone, 832-549-5792. Text me so that you can become a member of the Digital Growth community and unlock all 12 courses in our Digital Growth University. As a community member, you're going to get access to mastermind roundtables that I facilitate so that together you can expand your network by connecting and learning with other growth-minded financial brand marketing and sales leaders. So text my cell phone. Text me right now, 832-549-5792. And to thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Thank you for sharing your time with me. As a thank you, I want to help you benchmark your website so that you can see how your website performs, how it stacks up, how it compares to other financial brands. Text me 832-549-5792. Let's get back to the show with Ethan. So flash forward to where we're at today. And it's, like you said, it's social, NFT, crypto, Bitcoin, AI. And it was like, I never really got into the NFT space. I knew enough to be dangerous, but whenever asked, I was like, that's just not my wheelhouse. Whenever I got the whole Bitcoin, crypto, yeah, I know enough to be dangerous, blockchain, but it's not my wheelhouse. Definitely social media. Have been paying attention to this, studying this as a digital anthropologist, marketing, sales, tech, human behavior. And to see the human behavior component, particularly when it comes to the brand interface, I have this hypothesis and I want to get your take on this. And this is driving my next big evolution. It's the fact that the individual brand of a leader, of a lender, of an advisor has the potential to be as influential, if not even more influential than the corporate brand. And so there is positive with that. There's negative, there's risk, perceived risk involved into that. But a lot of that is being driven from the fact that, yes, we look at the influencer world and the ability for an individual to establish a platform, to influence others at scale through communication, regardless of what the medium is. How is this next evolution? Because when you look at like the social world and how the social world has changed, it was free for brands and everyone got all on the platform, and then no, we're going to monetize the platform, and so now the brands have to pay to play, and so the individual level of this, but then even on like LinkedIn, you're seeing the individual being able to promote and influence and target. So there's this whole, I think another shift that's happening right now that some are aware of, but I don't think many see today. And whenever I try to bring this to their perspective, they're like, no. I think we're good with what we've done, because what we did was a lot to get us to where we're at. I'm like, but it's not my opinion. I'm just watching the behavior of people. And to your point, it's like we're going to have to level up. We're going to have to cross the chasm. And when we choose to do that is going to be up to the individual who's watching or listening to this. But what's happening right now when it comes to this next shift, this next evolution?
Yeah, what's happening is that the banking industry is very similar to the legal industry. If we were boats, we are giant, massive ocean liners that are stable and well built for pirates, for tsunamis, to weather the storms of change and of life. But we move slowly and we do not pivot very well. We are slow moving ships. We are not nimble sailboats that are able to move with the wind. And so I say that analogy because entrepreneurs will jump on the latest thing and go. And like, I don't know where this is going to take me, but I've got a feeling that this is good and I'm just going to see where this path leads. And maybe I'll get roughed up and maybe I'll capsize, but as long as I don't sink the entire crew, we'll figure out a way to kind of get back. But banks and credit unions aren't willing to do that. And you know what? Neither are lawyers. So when we see things like AI, we see things like influencers, we see things like the human elements, I think you're right. The banking industry has said, look, from 2014, maybe, or 2010, whatever, 2016, whenever you dipped your toe in the water, to 2022, 2023, we had to go through such fundamental changes to have our old guard even accept digital strategy for the brand channels themselves. I can't go through another major change and start letting employees, loan officers, other people do these things because we just got here. All right, now you're saying I've got to change again? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes, because what's happening is you are seeing that even if you have a big, sturdy, stable, safe, and protective ocean liner, you can have employees that kind of drop off on their little boats. And they can be more nimble and they can reach areas that you can't, and they can move faster and they can engage with people quicker. And you're trying to hold on to what you know and hold on to what feels safe. And you're like, no, I don't want to bring in influencers. I don't see my employees as influencers. I realize that my loan officers, for example, who use their LinkedIn accounts to want to promote their professionalism and their niche and the wonderful ways in which we help people, they don't have the same knowledge and policies and procedures and compliance guidelines as we do. And so we don't want them to go out and do it because it's risky, because they don't want to sink their ship and they don't want us to sink our ship. But I think what we're seeing, as you say, is there is the human element now. And there has to be this level of acceptance of letting go. I read the book, The Art of Letting Go, 2 weeks ago when I was in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Man, that was tough because I had to let go of things personally and I struggle with those things, but I think it's the same thing where we also need to look at ourselves and say, are we as a bank, as a credit union, are we holding on too tight? Are we not allowing the natural evolution and the human element to take form? And are we not having an open mind to say, all right, we don't need to just let you go willy-nilly, but we need to embrace the human element and we need to create safe enough guidelines, safe enough communication to allow this natural evolution to occur in a way that meets the middle ground between complete entrepreneurism and movement and shift and change with acceptable levels of trust in our team and trust in the process and trust in these strategies that it's going to help guide us into our next evolution.
And I think the crux of it all is two little letters that we have mentioned: AI. And artificial intelligence. And we have been experimenting, learning, even collaborating with AI engines. However, um, on the opposite end of the spectrum is something that I'm thinking deeply about, which is authentic intelligence. And I hypothesize that as we exit the knowledge economy and close that chapter, because knowledge, thanks to large language models, has become commoditized. Um, and I hear a lot of times, particularly at the executive level, oh, well, it's not perfect. I go, well, this is as bad as it's ever going to get. So let's keep that in mind for some perspective. When it comes to complex buying journeys, products, financial services, that human element, I don't think is going to go away. It's just the way that people connect with people, how trust is established, how it's expanded. I think that's the continuous shift in the evolution. And so people are longing for authentic intelligence as well. And I mean, even looking at a headline today as of recording, um, Coca-Cola's AI generated holiday ad falls flat with consumers. It's people long for what is real. And what the conversation that we're having right now is unlocking authentic intelligence. It is based upon your experience. And so as we exit the knowledge economy, the next economy that I at least perceive right now, and I could be wrong, I'm willing to fall on a sword and say I didn't get this one right. And it's happened many, many times, but I do like to make leaps. I do like to continue to level up. And not every level up has been, a pain-free experience, but I'm grateful for the experiences nonetheless, because they have taught me, they have allowed me to continue to grow and evolve as an individual, as an entrepreneur, as a husband, as a father, in all of these different areas of my life, with which are truly now interconnected. I can't unentangle them. The next evolution is the wisdom economy. And wisdom is based upon experience. And your experience, your perspective is unique to you. My experience is unique to me. But the more that we do dialogue, discussion, discourse, and which is a bit ironic because this is what we used to do a long time ago, even pre-internet, going back civilizations, the Greeks, etc. It was dialogue, it was discussion, but we have the ability to now capture that, to amplify that, to help others outside of our own little timeline, if you will. I've had conversations with lenders. I've had conversations with leaders who are leading the way, and I would say, do have more of an entrepreneurial mind perspective. For those that are not there yet, where do you see things going to help give them, first and foremost, clarity? Because you mentioned fear of the unknown, fear of change, fear of failure is what holds so many of us back from leveling up. Where's the clarity to maybe transform the unknown into some, not certainty, but at least, I haven't thought about this before.
There was a quote that resonated with me, and that was, everything that you ever wanted exists on the other side of fear. And I think that caused me to reflect upon, what am I afraid of? What do I really want, and what's stopping me from doing that? And I think that the same questions that we have on an individual level are the same questions that we should be asking ourselves on the organizational level. Is, what am I really afraid of? And are those fears real? And why are they stopping me from taking action? I think that when we talk about any type of embrace of AI or a human element or authenticity or new technologies, like, everything is unknown for sure.
Yeah.
But we're now seeing, I think, a few different things that are out there. Is AI is going to be around in one form or another. We're going to take advantage of it or we're not. And we can't be too robotic like Coca-Cola, or people are going to see through it and we're going to fail. And we're also afraid of the situation. Do you remember, James Robert, the movie Her? with Joaquin Phoenix, where he falls in love with his operating system that was voiced by Scarlett Johansson?
No, but that actually sounds like a film that I need to watch.
It's great. Okay, so the guy buys a computer. The operating system is kind of training him. It's voiced by Scarlett Johansson, and it became what was crazy is the computer was a human element. It learned how to be an interactive human, like learned to kind of understood him, and he connected and fell in love with the artificial intelligence. Okay, and then it really unwinds into some crazy story about him dating his computer and the computer having other interests and the whole nine yards. It's fantastic, but it underscores your point of authenticity. And where do you find, you said it earlier, the balance between technology and human element, between authenticity and productivity, between innovation and connection, between fear and growth? And there's no bullseye that works for everyone. But I can tell you, my 43 years and my gray hair of experience, if you be who you always were and you stay in the same place, you won't grow. All right. At the same time, you can't just, in our position in the banking industry, jump into the abyss. Willy-nilly, thoughts unknown. You can't do that. You can't. Do you want to be the first person to innovate? Sure, but you're probably also going to come back either with your shield or on it. And, but we're in a space now where I think we can look to the future and say, who do we want to be and how do we want to evolve? And what of these strategies feels good and authentic to us that we are comfortable with? And what are the ones that we're not? And it's okay, because you don't got to go in all of those different directions. But I think you asked the question, like, what is it going to take to kind of get over that? And I think the answer is that you have to get over fear. And in order to do that, you've got to shed light on the things that you're afraid of. And you've got to talk about this. And you have to have a room of people who are experienced and wise and young and tech savvy and all the people in the middle to kind of say, hey, as a group, where do we find it's too much, it's too little, and where's the just right, and start taking those steps? Because the path of growth isn't accomplished overnight, but it also isn't accomplished standing still. And it's finding what are those first steps that we're willing to take, and how do we take those steps in a way that feels aligned, feels authentic to us, because those communications are then going to be authentic to people who receive it. And how are we going to do it in a way that is safe and secure, that we feel like we are not, jumping into the abyss, but instead moving forward? Because at the end of the day, it's about progress and it's not about perfection.
That was a key theme for Banking on Change, is looking at the idea of 1% growth, just being a little bit better today than yesterday. And it's almost like there's that idea of continuous evolution, because who I am today is not who I was tomorrow. Who I am today, or who I was yesterday, who I am today is not who I'm going to be tomorrow. And it's like dying these little deaths. In fact, I'm wearing my shirt right here. It's and you talked about come back on your with your shoulder on it. So memento mori is a personal motto of mine that I really do keep in the forefront of my mind, because my biggest fear used to be, ironically, the fear of death. My biggest fuel is death, because my biggest fear now is not realizing my future self and who I was meant to become, because I let some self-limiting belief hold me back from achieving that next level, from climbing that next mountain. So my biggest fear is not doing what I know I need to do and not having the courage to do that.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, that resonates on a personal level for sure. It's actually something that I've been thinking about personally myself. Is my lifestyle. It's incredible. I travel the world full time. I've been doing this for 5 straight years. I have been exploring the world, exploring the ideas, and exploring different concepts. Yet, when I had a recent reflection and time to take a step back and say, who am I? And who am I at this chapter of my life and who do I want to be? I realized my next chapter involves the exploration of my inner self and getting down to the root of facing my fears of embracing who I am at 43 as someone that travels the world, that helps banks and credit unions, that writes. I just wrote my ninth book. It was a Dungeons and Dragons gothic horror adventure because I wanted to do something like completely different. But I also felt like there were aspects of myself that I associated with my identity that I'm holding on to, that I need to experience some of those deaths and let those aspects go so I can embrace perhaps who I am at this current chapter and who I am meant to become. Who is my highest and best self? What is that? What is that soul? What is that truly light bringer that I can be that I can't be yet because I need to go inside and say, hey, it's time to let certain aspects of this stuff go. And I think in a way, it's a similar type of philosophical question that our listeners need to think about in our marketing strategies and as our growth. And can we truly grow by holding on to who we were as opposed to embracing who we are and who we're meant to become? And I think that same hard questions and the same silent reflection and the same inner work that we need to do on ourselves in order to truly embrace growth and change are the same fundamental principles that we need to evolve to look past what we're truly holding on to and what we're truly afraid of and why, so that we can ultimately go through the process of letting go of the past and embracing the present and embracing our future.
There's a lot of narrative archetype that I can see as this draws to a close, the hero's journey, voyage and return. I mean, so many films that tell this story, that tell this narrative, and it is the human experience for sure. And I think let's not forget that as we do wrap up, that our continuous transformation as individuals, as teams, as an organization, are to continue to transform the lives of people in the communities that we're serving, to help them, guide them, move them beyond financial stress, financial insecurity that's taking a toll on their health and their relationships and their just general overall sense of well-being, but to give them hope, to provide a path, to light the way, as you mentioned, being that light bearer. When you look at wrapping up on a very practical perspective here, Ethan, what would you recommend for someone watching or listening? Because there is opportunity to unlock the wisdom of the organization, of lenders, of leaders, of advisors to make a positive influence on people in the communities that they're serving, even through social media channels and probably a blend and a hybrid of both. What would you practically recommend that they do next on their own journeys of growth?
Yeah, I would say it's important to remember what matters. And technology is great, and technology should be used, and technology are tools to help us to accomplish objectives.
Yeah.
And we need to use tools to accomplish our goals. And we need to understand how the tools work and use the right tools to accomplish our objectives. However, tools themselves don't really matter. It's who wields the tools and how we use them. And I think at the end of the day, things like kindness, empathy, authenticity, and connection, that's what people are seeking in a digital world. And perhaps the question is not so much what tools should we use to help get us more clients, what AI is going to help us build our target demographic better, what's the hook on our advertising campaigns that's truly going to resonate with somebody, because people won't connect with the technology and they won't connect with the tools. They'll connect with the people who are using them. They'll connect with the people that make them feel good. They'll connect with the people that make them feel safe. They'll connect with the messaging that is truly authentic. And so I think your goal is, you're sitting here and figuring out what's next. You say, what's the right thing? How am I truly going to help people? How am I truly going to connect? And then what tools can I use within the digital space to help me reach and help me connect and help me to share that message? And I think that you'll find the right sweet spot for you, the right sweet spot for your team, the right sweet spot for your financial brand, and you'll have more peace of mind moving forward that you're not a robot and you're not an AI and you're not the tools that you use, but you are the heart and soul, and you are the connection, and you are the light that people can truly connect with and see fundamental change. And that these tools that we have will help us to do that, and that will embrace a better future together as a result.
Well, I appreciate the authenticity and the empathy and just showing up the way you did today. Like I said, you and I, we've known of each other. I've known of you for at least a decade at this point. And shout out to Amy McGraw for planting that seed probably a decade ago, more or less. And to see the journey that you've been on and just observe that from afar. And to see, I can't wait to see where you're going to go next, because your perspective, it is a unique perspective, because you have been able to travel, to see, to experience, and that does broaden the perspective here that you have shared today. So thank you, Ethan. If someone does want to continue the conversation that we have started together, what is the best way for them to reach out and say hello, connect with you? Because you have a podcast as well.
Thank you, James Robert. Appreciate that, and really appreciate the chance to connect with you in addition to our audience. Uh, you want to learn about how we help banks and credit unions, you visit thesocialmedialawfirm.com. You want to connect with me personally? Just Google Ethan Wall. You will see his ugly mug there, and you'll see, do I want to listen to a podcast? Do I want to join the journey on social media? Do I want to just reach out and learn about some of the nonprofit charity work that I do, like building little free libraries or things of that nature? So just Google me. Find whatever path follows you. There's nothing specific that I really care in terms of connecting and promoting, but yeah, Ethan Wall, the social media law firm. I'd love to hear from you. And I'd love to hear from you, of course, if you had legal questions, you want help, it's what I do. But I think, in a way, I'd feel even happier if I heard from you and said, things that you and James Robert talked about today really touched me. And I have a question personally. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to maybe help guide on your path. So thank you, James Robert. Thank you, of course, to Audrey as well. Thank you all for listening and for taking this hour-long journey with us. I think it's meant as much to me as perhaps to James Robert as well. So I'm very grateful to be here and very grateful for you all listening.
Absolutely. Google Ethan. Connect with Ethan. Learn and grow with Ethan. Reach out and say hello. As always, and until next time, be well, do good, and be the light.